Hello and welcome to Middle East Matters on France 24. I'm Nadia Massi. On the show this week, we will look at the media war being played out in the Israel-Palestine conflict. Fake news is circulating, arguably like never before. Coming up, Israel and Hamas's social media strategy and how you can work out if a video is fake. Now, it's been a bloody week in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. But rather than discussing what's happening on the ground, in this programme, we thought we would zoom out a little and look at the battle for public opinion, particularly with fake news circulating across social media. This first report is by James Mulholland.
On the ground, it's asymmetric, but on screens and online, the war being waged bears more similarities. And as usual, it's civilians at the centre of the fight for public opinion. Ahead of a ground invasion, the Israeli military dropped thousands of leaflets urging civilians in northern Gaza to leave. On social media, a message seemingly aimed more at international observers to back Israel's assertion that it, unlike Hamas, respects human rights.
We have called on the civilian population in Gaza City and the northern part of the Gaza Strip to evacuate south.
The Israeli Defense Forces goes on to offer what it says is proof of Hamas not allowing civilians to flee. Israel says Hamas is keeping civilians where they are to use them as human shields. The Palestinian group has denied the accusation. Hamas's communications war began at the same time as its attack on the morning of the 7th of October. At around 7 a.m., it began releasing a series of videos, including slick, well-produced material showing militants training and preparing for an attack. As Hamas flooded social networks, details of massacres began to emerge through footage filmed by the militants. Many Israelis learned the fate of their loved ones through such videos. Israel has regularly broadcast images of terrified citizens held captive or worse during Hamas's attack as part of its bid to win the war for public opinion abroad.
Now, researchers who study mis- and disinformation warn fake stories about this conflict are spreading fast, adding to the digital fog of war. Now, one of the people sifting through those fake videos is France 24's Catalina Marchant de Abreu, presenter of our Truth or Fake show, and she's with me in the studio now. Catalina, thanks for coming in. Show us, first of all, some examples of disinformation that you've found on social media.
Indeed, Nadia, the first casualty of war is the truth, and it couldn't be more real in this situation. We're going to show it with this first example, this viral video that started circulating on social media right when the news broke out that Hamas kidnapped over 150 people, including children, women, and seniors, where we see at least 5 children in this video that seem to be exhibited in this animal cage. So here are the claims that are shared by both sides of the spectrum, pro-Israel and pro-Palestine. The first claim where these users say that these children that we see in the cages are Israeli children held captive by Hamas. And then we also found claims on the other side, on the Palestinian side, claiming that these are Palestinian children held hostage by Israel in Israeli prisons. So, however, contrary to the claims, these images don't show either, Nadia. To find the origin of this video, the first thing we usually do is what's called a reverse image search. You can do this in Google with any given image, and it finds its earliest publication on the internet. And we found that the original video was in fact published on TikTok 4 days before the Hamas attack, around October 4th or 3rd. And since then, this account on TikTok was deleted. So to find any origin or context on this video, it's difficult to prove. However, it was a video posted before Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th. So a video that definitely has nothing to do with the current conflict between Israel and Hamas.
And Catalina, there's another example I know you want to show us as well. This is where users claimed that Israeli airstrikes had targeted a church in Gaza.
Indeed, here's another piece of information shared by all spectrums anti-Israel, pro-Russia, and conspiracy theories accounts in the U.S. as they all come together to claim that Israel warplanes bombed the largest Orthodox church in Gaza called the St. Porphyrius Orthodox Church. They all allegedly prove this claim with this video where we see these heavy airstrikes, where we see a series of blasts that these users claim destroyed Gaza's historic Orthodox church. A reverse image search led us to the same video that was originally published by a Turkish media on its website on October 10th that confirms that these Israeli airstrikes did take place in Gaza, where they also published the same video but in broad daylight. So thanks to this video during the day, we were able to geolocate approximately where these blasts took place in Gaza, in particular thanks to a building that we see in the video called Al Ragyab, located close to a branch of a Bank of Palestine in Gaza City. So thanks to all this information, we were able to do an itinerary that shows us that the Bank of Palestine is about 2.6 kilometers away or 10 minutes away from this church in the fake claims, hence concluding that these airstrikes could not have targeted the St. Porphyrius Orthodox Church in Gaza.
All right, really important fact-checking. Thanks very much indeed. Catalina Marchant de Abreu, thank you very much. Well, let's talk a bit more then about the image war and the coverage of Israel-Palestine more broadly. And I'm very pleased to be joined on the programme by Kurd Braddock. He's a professor in public communications and he focuses on propaganda and extremism. Thanks for joining us on France 24, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Look, this certainly isn't the first time a battle for hearts and minds has played out during an Israel-Palestine conflict. But do you think it's of a different magnitude this time?
I think so. I think not even just in magnitude, but in intensity as well. I think one of the things that Hamas seems to have learned in the last 10 years, or from the last time they've really picked up their armed operations, is the propaganda that ISIS had produced in the last 10 years or so, and the kind of effectiveness that that propaganda had. Now, there was a connection made between Hamas and ISIS by several individuals who support Israel more generally. And although that connection is tenuous, I think the propaganda game that Hamas is playing is much more sophisticated than it's been in the past.
And I'm interested in your views on how sort of media organisations are covering this story, particularly media organisations in the United States where you are and in the UK. I'm thinking of one particularly sort of terrible, gruesome story that emerged of babies being beheaded by Hamas during their attack on Israel. Now, that story was published by multiple outlets. It was on the front pages of a number of newspapers in the UK. The US President, Joe Biden, mentioned it as well. But in the end, the Israeli army itself said it couldn't confirm that claim, even though it went really quite viral. I wonder what you made of that story and how it was reported.
Well, gruesome as it was, I did find that whole episode very interesting because as that news broke of the apparent beheaded babies, there was no immediate confirmation. And then within a few hours of the claim, a smaller media company whose name is escaping me right now did confirm the claim on Twitter, but then it was walked back by the IDF. So it really did muddy the water as to whether this claim was true. I think that's compounded by the 24-hour news cycle in the United States and the proliferation of online news and fake news, in the need to be first instead of being right. Now, unfortunately, there's an incentive for individuals, whether they're producing content for online consumption or major media outlets, to be first and have that breaking news, especially breaking news that is as provocative and as gruesome as something like 40 beheaded babies.
And you mentioned fake news earlier. Catalina mentioned it as well. We know it's spreading enormously at the moment, particularly on platforms like X, which used to be known as Twitter. I wonder if you could just sort of lay out for us how serious a problem you think it is right now, and whether you think tech giants are failing to clamp down on misinformation and disinformation.
Oh, I think it's a massive problem. It's clear that people get their news primarily from online sources now. So these online social media outlets are the place where everybody goes to get their news these days. And X, formerly Twitter, is one of the main outlets that people get news from. And Elon Musk apparently has no intention, or at least no incentive, to reduce the spread of disinformation on X. He, in fact, I think, retweeted an account calling it credible, which had in the past used anti-Semitic slurs as part of their communication strategy. Now, X has, in my opinion, gone downhill in terms of its credibility and in terms of the reliability of the information on the platform. Though there are other platforms that are trying to take steps to reduce the disinformation that proliferates there, it's still, I think, an uphill battle.
Professor Kurd Braddock, thank you very much indeed, sir, for your thoughts and for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, still with us in the studio is France 24's Catalina Marchant de Abreu. And Catalina, just finally, what tips do you have as something of an expert for viewers out there who might want to actually verify themselves whether a video is fake or not?
Well, Nadia, first of all, it's always important to look at the quality of the video. If the quality is low or if it's pixelated, this can always be suspicious. Also, always look at the profile of the sources posting certain claims and where they stand in the political spectrum. So all comments on every post, this is really important to read the comments on a post. They can also give you clues as to the origin of any given video, and a reverse image search is always where we begin. Then, if you want a safe space to verify images, you can always go to geoconfirm.org, a website that is run by IT volunteers, and that, in fact, it was created during the first day of the war in Ukraine, where now you can also verify images of the conflict between Hamas and Israel. So how does it work? You go to the map on the conflict zone and click on one of the icons. This one, for instance, shows videos of hostage-taking situations, where they clarify that this link in particular in X shows Hamas taking Israeli hostages in Be'eri, Israel. And in the bottom, they include all of the geolocation services that they've performed on this video, confirming that it is real. So they also include descriptions, time, dates. So any video on this website is real and fact-checked, a good online source that can prove helpful during breaking news situations where social media is flooded by misinformation and disinformation.
All right, really helpful. Thank you very much indeed, Catalina Marchant de Abreu. We appreciate it. And thanks to you as well for watching Middle East Matters this week on France 24. That's it for the show, but do stay with us. Much more still to come here on France 24, and we're back at the same time next week.
The Lampedusa harbour, about 100 kilometres from the African coastlines, is the first port of call for those fleeing their countries. But the maritime crossing is dangerous and often deadly.
Questo scenario terrificante, almeno 200 persone in mare che chiedevano aiuto, fra di loro c'erano già dei cadaveri che galleggiavano.
Survivors try to rebuild their lives.
بابا خمسة مرت حادثنا قال ما لا بتصراحة ينقروها.
أنا أقول لهم سابجا أنا أقول لكم حتى هاش.
لكنها بحسب
الله.
نقرم الله.
الله يا حسبي الله.
On a continent struggling to accommodate them.
Poi riportarli indietro, aiutarli nel loro paese a sta gente, perché poveri disgraziati non cosa devono fare.
Lampedusa Revisited on France 24 and France24.com.